Hey y'all, I'm Hope, and today I'm wrapping up all the books that I read in May. This ended up being a pretty good reading month because I was participating in May the Force Read with you, so I had some extra motivation to be picking up the books that were on my list. I did go off my TBR a little bit, but I really enjoyed most of the stuff that I read. I ended up reading 5 books for a total of 1,254 pages, which is my best page count so far this year, so I'm pretty excited about that. Especially because I've now got some more motivation going into June, so I think my reading is going to continue to pick up from there. The first book that I finished in May was Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee, which I read for the Force Valor prompt, which was to read a book under 275 pages. This is a great little novella about Esther, who wants to become a manticore hunter after her family is torn apart by a manticore, and it's following her journey of kind of achieving that goal, the friends that she makes, the relationship she forms with her rock, Zara. These are all kind of the elements of the story. I would say it's a fairly slow-paced fantasy story. This isn't as action-packed as you would think based on the premise, but I think there are some really good action scenes in here. But this really is a character-focused look at Esther and her reaction to the grief that she feels after what happened to her family and the kind of purpose that she finds through that. So I think this is a fascinating book. I really enjoyed it. It is definitely slower, so if you're not a reader that likes a slow-paced book or really like careful character studies, which is really what this more is, I don't know that you're going to like this as much, but there are some really great action scenes in here. I think the ones that are here are really well written, and I really enjoyed the descriptions of how the rocks hunt and how they interact with their not their riders. They're not rock riders. This is the confusion I had when I first started this book. I thought the rocks were bigger than they are. They're not. They're birds of prey. It's more like is it falconing? That kind of a thing. So I really enjoyed reading about like those interactions and how that whole process worked. But this is definitely a fast read, despite its slow pace. I got through this in like 2 days. I could have read it in one afternoon, but I didn't budget the time for that. But I think this is a great one to pick up if you're looking for something short and easy to get through. Before I forget to mention it, I think I gave this one like 4.5 or 5 stars because I absolutely loved it, and it's a new favorite. I almost forgot to mention that. The next thing I finished in May was It's Witchcraft by Cole McCade, which I think I ended up giving 3.5 stars maybe. This is the 5th book in the Criminal Intention series, which is a romantic suspense crime procedural series. It's a little bit like if Criminal Minds was a book series and also had a romance at its center. I really enjoy the series. I think it's really fun. It's following Malcolm and Songjae, who are both detectives in the Baltimore Police Department, and they're, working together to solve various crimes. There's also like an overarching plot like you would have with a TV show. There is like this other mystery that's happening kind of in the background of all of the other cases, which I think is really interesting, and I'm interested in how that's evolving. Hang on a second, I'm getting a phone call. Okay, where did I leave off? I think I was saying that I was enjoying seeing I was interested to see how the overarching plot was going to develop, because there's that overarching kind of background mystery. This particular installment I think is the weakest of the ones I've read so far. I really loved books 1 through 4, and I think this one was not as well balanced. The previous books have mostly kind of interwoven all of the like different pieces of the stories. Basically, there's like 3 things going on. There's like the overarching plot, there's the case for each individual book, and there's a romance between the 2 main characters. Those things are generally well balanced in the other books. I've enjoyed the way that those kind of weave in and out, where you get like a little bit of mystery, a little bit of romance, a little bit of like ominous build-up for this other mystery in the background. This one I felt like was a little more blocky. Like there's a block at the beginning that's just all character stuff. It's all about this romance and like the development between these 2 main characters. Then the bit in the middle, and that's like the first 40% of the book. Then there's a bit in the middle that's like all of the mystery for this one. It's just like investigating the mystery. There's like a little bit of character development in the middle of that, but it's mostly in the middle solving this mystery. And then at the end, we get a lot of like plot threads coming together for the overarching mystery. So it felt kind of unbalanced, because there was this whole thing where at the very beginning, the prologue, you see what the murder is. You get to see the murder from the point of view of the victim. And then that just kind of drops for like the next 40% of the book, and it takes them ages to actually get to the crime scene. So I kept going like, yes, I love these characters, but we've been in this gym, because I spent a long time in a gym, for a long time, and I would like to get to the crime scene now so that we can start moving forward on that. And it took way too long to get there, and it just felt like those pieces were not as well balanced as they have been in previous installments. So the third book that I read was Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 2, which is subtitled Fearsome Womb. And just as a side point here, I love the individual titles for the volumes of Jujutsu Kaisen, because the first one, Volume 1, Ryomen Sukuna. Very simple. We meet him very early on. We know exactly who this is. The title makes sense. You get to Part 2, or to Volume 2, and this one's title is Fearsome Womb. And I still don't quite understand why it was called that, but it was there were a couple of chapters that were Fearsome Womb Part 1 and 2, or Part 2 and 3 or something. I think maybe Part 1 was in Volume 1. Anyway, I was a little confused. I'm that's kind of a weird title, but alright. I'm on Volume 3 now, and the title of that one is Young Fish in Reverse Punishment, and I have no idea what the hell that means. So I'm enjoying how weird the titles for the individual volumes of this series are. But I finished Volume 2. This one I think is interesting because it's starting off from a very different point than Volume 1. Things escalate very quickly at the end of Volume 1, so we're left with an entirely new status quo at the beginning of Volume 2. So I am curious to kind of see where that's going to go, and we learn a lot more about the kind of antagonists for the series. There's a villain introduced in Volume 1 who's still important, but now we have this a new set of villains who've just been introduced who seem to have a separate goal. It's unclear what their goal is, but it doesn't seem to be in alignment with the villain from Volume 1. So I am interested to see where all of that is going to go, and I'm curious to see how the main character, Yuji Itadori, is going to develop his skills, because he is naturally talented at quite a few things, but he doesn't really know how to do any of the stuff that the other sorcerers know how to do, because he's just not had that exposure to it or that chance to learn. So I'm curious to see how he's going to develop. I think he's kind of one of those where it's he's a special boy with special powers, and now he's going to be extra good at learning how to use them. Feels a little like it's going to go that direction, and I would be interested to see more training for him and him actually struggling. So I'm not sure which way that's going to go, but I am going to be reading Volume 3 in the next couple of days, so I guess I'm going to find out. But I liked Volume 2 just fine. I think I gave it 3 stars. I think it's a little more confusing than Volume 1. It was a little harder to get to grips with what was happening, but it's still a fun series, and I'm planning to continue on at this point. The next thing I finished was Spirits Abroad by Zen Cho, which is a short story collection. I have it here. Should have picked it up first. This is a short story collection based in Malaysian folklore and mythology, and I just loved this collection. I think I gave it 4.5 stars, maybe 4 to 4.5. It wasn't perfect. There were a couple of stories that I think just didn't work for me. I didn't get what they were going for, but a lot of these stories were just really well done. I really liked the way that Zen Cho wrote the characters in here, and the way she was able to get me attached to the characters in very short periods of time, because a lot of the stories in here are very short. I really enjoyed the way that family was very much a central focus in here. There were a lot of stories that focused on family relationships between parents and children, or sisters, or kids and their aunts, and things like that. I just really enjoyed the family relationships and all the dynamics that kind of came out of that, and the very different kinds of relationships that we saw here. There were a lot of also kind of stories with very tender romances that happened. They're very small romances because they're short stories, but all the ones that did have that element I thought were very sweet and really well done. I was really invested in those characters, and I just overall really enjoyed this collection. I think it was fantastic, and I'm not usually a short story reader, so I was really pleased that I liked this one so much. I do want to mention a couple of my favorite stories, so if you pick it up, these are the ones that I liked the best. Sorry, I gotta flip to the page. The first Witch of Damansara I really liked, about a girl who returns home to Malaysia after living in the West for a while, but her grandmother has died, and so she's returning for the funeral. The House of Aunts, I think, is one of my favorites. It really centers those family relationships, and I thought was a really interesting exploration of those relationships and of just kind of teenagehood in general. I thought that was really well done. There's 2 of them, Rising Lion, The Lion Bows, and a 7-star drum that follow the same kind of group of people. I really liked both of those. It's about a lion dancing group that also are ghost hunters. Prudence and the Dragon was very good. If at first you don't succeed, try again. That one was fantastic. And another one that had like a really interesting relationship at the center of it. And The Terracotta Bride was the other one I wanted to mention. So those are some of my favorites that I read out of this collection, and I just really enjoyed this. And I probably will come back and reread this at some point. The last thing that I finished in May was The Forest of Stolen Girls by June Hur, which I finished on May 31st at like 11:30 p.m. So I just barely finished it in May. It's just occurred to me I have not mentioned what these other ones were for. I read It's Witchcraft for Transfer Force, a borrowed book. I read Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 3 for the Ewok prompt, and I read Spirits Abroad for the Droids prompt book with no people on the cover. And then this one I read for Plant Surge, which is a book with nature on the cover. So I don't know if you can really see it here, but there's lots of like flowers all over the cover here. But this one follows Hwani, who is the daughter of a famous detective in Korea during, well, not Korea, before it was Korea. I can't remember the name of it right now. Joseon. So, Joseon, 1426, Hwani is the daughter of like a famous detective, and she's returning to the island where she grew up because her father has a year ago, returned to the island to try and solve some sort of mystery there where a bunch of girls were going missing, and she is now following after him because he himself is now missing, and so she wants to find out what's happened to him. At the same time, she's going to be reconnecting with her estranged sister, Maewol, who stayed on the island when she and her father left when they were younger. And all of this is centered on, as well, a historical event. Not that historical, it was like 7 years ago. But several years ago, Hwani and Maewol were witnesses to a death where a young woman apparently committed suicide, and then they were found in the forest nearby, nearly frozen to death. And when they awoke, Maewol said that she had seen a man with a white mask and a sword in the forest prior to this young woman's body being found. And so that happened all these years ago, and their father never solved that case. It's the only case he never solved. And so now he's returning to the island because more girls are going missing, and he wants to try and like redeem himself and solve that original case, but also figure out what's happening to all of these girls that are going missing. And then that leads Hwani to follow him because now he's gone too. So that's the setup for this story, and I really enjoyed this one. I think I gave this 4 stars. I didn't think this was as strong as June Hur's debut, The Silence of Bones, which is one of my favorite mysteries and one of my favorite books of all time. It's so good. This one, I think, it would be really hard to kind of live up to the emotional punch that The Silence of Bones is. So this one is not quite as strong in that regard. I think we don't get enough kind of quiet character moments. I think there's some bits near the end that were intended to be like a kind of emotional gut punch, and they just didn't land as well because there weren't as many kind of quiet character moments in this one to kind of build and develop the relationships between Hwani and Maewol. And then the other issue I had was that there was quite a lot of plot conveniences here. There were a lot of moments where Hwani would like hit an obstacle and you'd be like, oh, how's she gonna get out of this? How is she gonna get out of this one? And someone would like swoop in to save the day. Someone would come in and get rid of the obstacle for her. And I felt like that was a little frustrating because I wanted Hwani to have more agency, especially because a lot of this story was centering on how women during this period didn't have a lot of agency. Women on this island of Jeju, where she grew up, have a little more agency than women on the mainland, but there was a lot of focus on that lack of agency and lack of ability to choose what they want to do with their lives. And I wanted Hwani to have a little more ability to kind of get herself out of situations, but it just kept being like, oh, well, Maewol is here to help her, or someone else is here to help her. And so there wasn't a lot of instances where she actually, like, herself solved the problem. So I really wanted a little bit more of that. There were also a couple of points where she was able to do something physically that she should not have been able to do because of other events in the book, things that had already happened to her. That was a little weird. There were some things I was like, you should not be able to do that. You should be too ill to be doing that. But other than that, I did really like this. I think the mystery is really interesting and really compelling, and it kind of, I wouldn't say quite kept me guessing, because I kept knowing that the things that Hwani was, like, following were not going to be the answer. She was a little too sure of herself, too quick to jump to conclusions, but I was really curious to see how it was going to play out and how the ending was going to affect her because of this tendency of hers to kind of jump to conclusions. I knew there would be some difficulty for her once the answer was revealed to kind of adjust to that, and I was really enjoying how, like, that piece of it played out near the end of the book. So I did really enjoy this. I think mystery's fun. I think the relationship in here is really good, even though it wasn't quite as emotionally difficult for me as the one in The Silence of Bones. I did really enjoy the relationship between Juani and Maywalt and the ways that it evolved over the course of the story. So I would overall really highly recommend this one. I think it is a really great mystery, and I'm looking forward to reading June Hur's third book because I do have that one on my shelf as well. I have not read The Red Palace yet. So those are all of the books that I read in May, and I really enjoyed most of them. I think I ended up having a 4.2 average star rating, so I'm really happy with that, and I had a good time. I'm looking forward to doing some more reading in June because I've really picked up my reading pace, and I'm excited to start picking up more books and getting some more things read off my shelves. So that is all I have for you today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, so there is more content coming soon, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.